If you like the sweet science, get ready to talk boxing on the Gloved Fist podcast with top boxing writers Frank LOTIERZO and Jack Hirsch. Frank, a former amateur boxer out of Philadelphia, writes for NY Fights and can be seen on the Boxing Channel. Jack, an amateur boxer who competed in the New York Golden Gloves, was a 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association. And now, here's Frank LOTIERZO and Jack Hirsch.
And we're back. Welcome to Glove Fist. My name is Frank LOTIERZO, former writer, try to be full-time observer, joined by former 6-term president of the Boxing Writers Association of America, Jack Hirsch. Jack, let's continue the conversation we had off air. You don't want me to ride my motorcycle.
No. But Frank, I mean, this is a continuation. This is great. Like, it was like the game's being played and there's a commercial and the game is being played while the commercial, and now the commercial ends and the game is, the players are running up and down the court. You know, I'm sure, you know, ABC will do a better job than that in the Nick game. But yeah, Frank, I'm trying to talk you out of riding your motorcycle. I'm not the biggest fan. Statistically speaking, your chances of getting in an accident are so much greater than in a car. Plus, if you do get in an accident, the consequences potentially are so much greater. But then I know I'm not going to get you to change your mind, because I know enough people have talked to you about it. And as long as I just mention it one time, you won't be annoyed at me. And now you'll let it go. If you forget about it, okay, you'll realize I'm concerned about you, but you don't want to hear about it because you're aware of everything I'm going to say. But then I, of course, couldn't resist giving you a little dig. The reason I believe, knowing you and your personality, you took up the motorcycle in the first place, because you were trained out at Smoking Joe Frazier's gym. And of all the fighters in boxing history, this is a good one. The motorcycle riders. I was going to say there was none bigger than Smoking Joe, and that's why. But there was young Stribling. He got killed.
Young Stribling, right. He was never a champion, but yes.
Well, he was, young Stribling had a long career. Oh, man, he must have about 200 fights approximately.
About that.
He only stopped once in this whole career, and that was when he challenged Max Schmeling for the heavyweight title and got stopped in the 15th round. So young Stribling was a real Iron Man. I mean,
tough, Iron Man, tough guy. Well, not much of a puncher, but it's funny how that happens too, because you find out a lot of times guys that aren't big punchers usually take a good shot, and the guys that are big punchers don't always take a great shot. And Stribling was in that in the latter part of that conversation.
Yeah, I want to be upfront with everyone. What we discussed beforehand. Once in a while, you have a week of boxing where there's no real news, you feel. You can always dig something up. There's always things to talk about, and especially we love talking about the old timers. But when, you know what, when we came on, these aren't exactly big fights, but Bam Bam Rodriguez fights this week in Arizona. Okay, so he's going to be fighting Saturday night. He's fighting a decent fight, Antonio Vargas, for Vargas's WBA bantamweight title. And I guess if Bam Bam wins decisively, there's been a lot of talk about him potentially fighting Naoya Inoue, okay? And that would be a lighter weight class type super fight if it took place.
I'm a big Bam fan, Jack, and I can't believe I actually forgot about that fight. But you're right.
I forgot about it too, in a sense.
That's on the
zone.
On the zone card. And look, you've talked about it before. I love Bam. I think he's one of the best fighters in the game. I don't see him having much of a chance against Inoue. If Bam's going to get beat, it's going to get beat. He's going to be by a bigger guy. It's not going to be by a guy moving up to fight him. That's my opinion. Because I just think he overpowers anybody smaller than him, even if they're better technically. And I think Bam may be as good technically, but I just don't think he can deal with the speed and the power and the precision of Inoue. I just can't see a guy going to 118 to 122 to do that. You know, the fight, I wish we could.
You see, that's what's wrong with boxing. And I think your attitude is wrong on this with these weight classes, Frank. I think we make too big of a deal, and people have told me I've been wrong. Oh, a few pounds means a lot in the lower weight classes. I don't think it means that much. I really don't. Because the divisions used to be 118 to 126, bantamweight to featherweight. There was no stopgap in between. Lightweight was 135 to 147. It means a lot, obviously, if you're a light heavyweight, maybe trying to move up to heavyweight. Obviously, then it could be, devastating to give up that type of poundage. But I don't want to hear, oh, a guy's moving up 2, 3 weight divisions. Who cares? It means nothing.
Jack, I think under featherweight, it's a big deal, though. And I think the style contrast between these guys is Inouye is a small guy that fights like a big guy. Bam is a small guy that fights like a small guy. And I just think at the end of the day, the strength will be the factor. Now, look, until they fight, you don't know. We've seen it happen before. I mean, we saw Spinks move up. We've seen Roy Jones move up. We saw Terrence Crawford move up. But Inouye is that one special guy. I just don't think he can get beat by a guy who is not as powerful as him, or who can't make him do what he doesn't want to do. And I don't think Bam can do that. I would be rooting for Bam in that fight. I just think the physics go against him.
Well, let's assume, and you can't assume anything. I know that Bam wins decisively against Vargas this Saturday, and he goes on to fight Inoue. Is it possible he could be catching Inoue on the way down? Inoue at the back end of his prime, put it that way.
I mean, Jack, that's possible. I would like to fight a lot better if Inouye had to come back down to 118. I think it would be a lot. I'd like it better then, but Inouye has grown into that weight. I don't think Bam can make that jump against that guy. I see your point where you can say, yeah, we can have guys move up and down, but I just think at that level against a guy like Inouye, I just think it's a bridge too far for Rodriguez. I have a couple friends that disagree with me, so they'll probably fight because they both need opponents, and we'll find out.
Because I think of fighters like at 118, like fighting Hirata, who moved up from 118 to featherweight, and have been like others as well.
You know the fight I wish we could see? I wish we could go into a time machine and bring back Wilfredo Gomez at 122 and put him in with Inouye.
Yeah, well, Gomez at its peak. Gomez had substance abuse problems. But keep in mind with bypassing divisions, no one ever brings up that Roberto Duran went 135 to 147. He didn't stop.
Mosley did the same thing.
Who?
Mosley did the same thing.
Mosley did the same. Yeah, but Duran, look who he beat. Okay, went up to 147. He first beats Carlos Palomino, a Hall of Fame, a great fighter. Then, of course, the monster win over Sugar Ray Leonard. He didn't. He beat he was the very best at 140.
But he did fight 7 or 8 times, Jack, as a welterweight before he fought Palomino. After every fight between DeJesus 3 and Palomino, he was 142 or better in those fights. So it's like he did fight as a welterweight for about a year and a half or so. It wasn't like he went one fight to Palomino. He fought 7 or 8 times against Monroe Brooks, Zeferino Gonzalez, some of those guys.
Oh, well, non-title fight. Speaking of Duran, early in the week, about 5 days ago, one of his past opponents passed away, Ray Lampkin. Ray Lampkin challenged Duran for the lightweight title. Ray Lampkin put up a terrific fight.
13 or 14 rounds, right?
I think it was the 14th round. He got stopped in. But what that fight is most remembered for is not
it's for what Duran said afterwards.
Right. Not the action that took place in the ring. You could tell us what Duran said afterwards in the interview.
Lampkin gave Duran a pretty good go for a while, and then eventually Duran just tracked him down and stopped him. And Duran said he would have killed him if he was in good shape.
Yeah, he's right. He said if I would have been in condition, they wouldn't be taking Lampkin to the hospital. When he heard Lampkin was being taken to the hospital, he said they'd be taking him to the morgue. Now, rather than get offended with the public, where they could have been outraged and said they were disgusted with Duran, that helped the Duran legend grow. It grew
Made
its
him
legend.
more like a menace.
I don't like to say it, and people won't admit it, but they loved that remark. They loved
Do you
it
remember what
because
Sonny Liston said after he knocked out Al Westfall?
No.
I forget if it was Chris Schenkel or Cosell, but there's Westfall lying in the ring, and they go, "Sonny, how do you think Westfall looked?" And he said he looked good, meaning when he was being counted out.
Yeah. I mean, I guess one of my favorites, I guess, is the Jerry Quarry one I mentioned before, when he knocked out Jack Bodell. It was in England. The British press is trying to get Quarry to compliment Bodell, and Quarry doesn't know what to say. How much can you compliment a guy you knocked out in one round? Finally, one reporter asked Quarry, "Did you find Bodell to be awkward?" And Quarry said, "Well, he fell awkwardly, you know." That was about the best he could do there.
You know, it's funny you bring that up, because I was talking to a friend of mine the other night, and we were talking about fighters that became announcers. This guy's a real big Sugar Ray Leonard fan, and we were critiquing Leonard as an announcer. And I said, what bothered me about Leonard is the complete opposite of Jerry Quarry. Leonard was always politically correct, where Jerry Quarry, as he was in that Bodell fight, he just was as honest as could be, and he would basically say, "Look, these two shouldn't fighting. This shouldn't go 5 rounds." And he kind of got in trouble because of that.
Yeah. Well, no. What happened? Quarry reportedly, and I don't know if this is the case at all. He lost his. I mean, he lost his job at CBS, but the main reason was, I shouldn't say reportedly, he made a comeback. And he was fought, and he made a comeback under the promotional banner Don King when he fought Lorenzo Zanone in 1977, 2 years after he'd been retired. And Bob Arum was the main promoter for CBS at the time, who Quarry was the broadcaster for. And King's fights would be on ABC, the rival. So Quarry believed, and he said at the time, that he thought Arum was dictating to CBS. Like, if this guy's making a comeback in the ring, why are you doing it for another network? So that's the reason why Quarry felt he was let go. But I'm going to tell you this.
ABC also paid him more money than CBS was paying for the fight. That was another part of it.
Well, yeah, but it's different. Hypothetically, he could have the match on ABC and then continued with his work as a broadcaster on CBS. But I can understand CBS feeling, you're broadcaster bus, you're making a comeback and you're fighting for someone else. It would be, an example would be, let's say a Larry Merchant was a fighter and he made a comeback and fought on Showtime.
Right.
So I can kind of understand that.
Maybe Quarry's, his candor was not such a big deal in the press, but Tom Brookshire, who did the fights with Quarry, told me that off the scenes, Quarry, they weren't happy with the way Quarry was and some of the things he said about certain fighters that fought on their air because he was tough on them and said, this shouldn't be a fight. Howard Smith should not be in the ring with Ernie Shavers, fights like that. And Brookshire said that, like, they had production meetings where they'd lean on Quarry. He said he didn't listen, but they lean on him.
You gotta make an adjustment if you're a commentator. It's one thing not to say anything you don't want to say. You might say to them, no, I can't say that. I don't believe in that. But to emphasize something that they don't want, it's a tough call. It's a tough call. I don't think you have to make a decision whether you're going to go along with the network or not, how valuable your job is. Look, I heard that this came to the grapevine that Mike Coppinger on the show they have on the Zone, Inside the Ring, he does it with Max Kellerman, LaShawn McCoy. Before
I've seen it.
Even, fought Usyk, Mike Coppinger labeled it as a mismatch. And reportedly, His Excellency got ticked off, got in touch with Mike Coppinger, and didn't like that. So Mike Coppinger didn't bring it up again. Okay? And if you bring it up again, you're inviting trouble. But how do you keep your integrity and your self-respect? I guess you give examples, like Eddie Hearn's a master at that. For example, our guy, Christian Prango, who's fighting Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn is saying, and rightfully so, well, his qualifications are better, Prangas, than Rico Haraven. He's a real fighter, he has a resume with the 20 knockouts. And
he was also a kick fighter.
And yeah, and Eddie Hearn is saying, are you going to tell me that Pranga is thought to have less of a chance than, Rico had? And that's the truth. No one was
That's a
giving
good
Rico
point.
a chance.
I didn't know that was going. That's a good point.
Right, but that's how Eddie Hearn gets around it. He's not saying, oh, this is going to be a great fight. I think Rico this, Rico that. He points out, well, the record shows he's a puncher. He's not lying. There are ways to get around things, smooth it out in a sense. Speaking of that, a lot of years ago, I don't think we ever talked about this, because with all the talk with the Knicks and talking about boxing and talking about guys who aren't traditional fighters taking on world-class fighters like Ngannou against Fury, McGregor against Mayweather, there was some serious talk of Wilt Chamberlain fighting Muhammad Ali. And at that time, Chamberlain was considered to be a Superman as far as a physical specimen goes. His height was legendary at that time. Guys won 7'1" at that time. And there were a lot of people who were feeling that Chamberlain was such a great athlete and so on, that he could actually beat Ali.
That's crazy.
But then again, what we were just talking about a moment ago, and I'm only playing devil's advocate, that's it. Didn't we think it would be crazy, McGregor beating Mayweather, Ngannou beating Fury? They didn't do it, but they came up with good fights. And of course, Rico against Usyk gave him quite a scare. The boxers haven't lost. Yeah, the boxers actually 4-0 in the mixed martial arts thing. But let's face it, the boxers outside of Joshua destroying Ngannou, the other 3 fights, the mixed martial artists did much better than people thought, and the boxers did a lot worse.
A lot of the different. I think a contributing factor to that is the fact that combat sports is so much bigger today than it was when we came up. I don't know about you, but when I was 15, there was nowhere to go to box in Jersey. You had to go to Philly, or I had to go to North Jersey. Okay. Well, I wanted to box before I got my license, so I really couldn't do it. But back then, there were either places that did karate, or you had to go to the Philly to box. Today, Jack, just where I live now, and I live about 3 miles from the house I grew up in. Okay. And I'll bet you within 10 miles of where I am, there's at least 8 boxing rings I could have access to, where when I was growing up, that wasn't the case. So my point is this: across the board, guys are getting much more exposure to combat sports than they had 50 years ago. So when you would have an untrained guy or a guy that's not a fighter get in the ring with a boxer, it usually was a mismatch. Today, I think, especially in the heavyweight division, it's twofold. Number one, the mean across the board is the guys doing combat sports and kickboxing or MMA. There's boxing involved in that, so they're exposed to it. So I think that gives them a level up. And I also think today, Jack, the mean of the fighter in the heavyweight division has come down a lot. And I know that sounds like an old man, get off my lawn, but I'm sorry. The mean of the fighters today has come down. I remember when we would talk about the 80s and how bad they were. And other than Holmes, Tyson, maybe Witherspoon or Page or Dokes or those guys, there really wasn't much going on. But looking back now, I realize, and I think you would agree, the 80s heavyweights weren't as bad as we thought, looking back compared to what we have today. And when we see the Ngannous and the Rico Verhoevens get in there and do good, I think that somewhat supports it.
Yeah, but eras change, but which brings us up really to state of boxing, like all in all. I don't think it's as bad as people are making out to be. It might actually be better in the sense we can see any fight any time virtually.
We really can't though,
think
Jack, because you have to have 15 passwords and jump through all different
right,
apps
right.
to do it.
It's a pain in the butt. You got to
Hey,
pay
Keith.
for. Hey Keith, how you doing? Keith is getting ready for the Nick game here, over there. But Keith picks the Knicks in 6, by the way. Frank, didn't you pick San Antonio to win this in the beginning of the series?
No, I said I could not make a pick. I couldn't pick either side.
Are you going to pull a Mac on us? You're going to wait till the Knicks have 3 wins, and then when they win the series, you're going to say, "Oh, I predicted the Knicks would win."
Jack, I did not make a pick. I said that the Knicks match up better with San Antonio than OKC, but I could not make a pick. But I will say this: after watching 2 games and seeing those 2 teams on the court at the same time, the Knicks are the better team. And if it wasn't for Wembanyama, this series would be a joke. Well, but I couldn't make a pick on it. It was one of the few times there was a sporting event where it's like I don't have any dog in the fight. It's like I was a San Antonio fan during the Duncan Robinson era, but I have to admit, since Tim Duncan retired, I don't follow the NBA that much anymore.
Wembanyama, with his height, he's reportedly 7'4". I would assume he has no formal training in boxing. Even though, I mean, who knows?
Oh, okay? Jack, come on. We're not going to make him a boxer.
No. Why is it harder to make a tall guy like him a boxer? Okay, let's compare. Let's say you got a guy who didn't particularly play sports. He's 18 years old by this point, 16 years old. And you got to start teaching him a sport. You're teaching him basketball, and you're teaching him how to be a fighter. Which one could he probably be more successful in? Maybe that's not a good question.
I think we'd have to see the guy. I will say this, though. I think height, to a certain degree, is an advantage in probably about 95% of sports.
Why are boxers usually, it would seem to be not good athletes? And I know this firsthand. I went to a charity basketball game years ago at York College where there were a lot of boxers. They took part in the game. I remember Kenny Smith came there, Anthony Mason. They weren't really playing, but they were hanging out. And watching the boxers play, man, oh man, I thought I was in gym class again. They didn't look any, these like a world-class, fighters. Or very good ones too. And they just didn't look that athletic. I mean, take one of the all-time great fighters, Smoking Joe Frazier. My guess is he was lousy, in sports. You put a baseball bat in his hand.
He probably couldn't hit the ball out of the outfield like Marciano.
Yeah. Well, no, Marciano was at least a decent baseball player. Not good enough.
But I mean, he wasn't a big hitter like he was in boxing.
No, but okay.
He had a good arm, but he couldn't hit the ball out of the infield.
Because I remember before Marvis Frazier fought Larry Holmes, one of the sticking points to build Marvis Frazier up, that unlike other boxers, he was a real athlete.
He wrestled and he played football in high school. Yes, that's a fact.
Right. Okay, so, but so many of these fighters, great fighters, they might not be particularly good athletes, and the great athletes in other sports might not be particularly.
They doesn't transfer to boxing. In a lot of the cases, Jack, great fighters are born. Okay, and you got to remember too, until the last 20 years, boxing was a sport where it was a city sport, and the people on the lowest rung, on the economic chain, they had the most access to it, and they fought with a reason. It's like a lot of my friends ask me why I didn't go on and fight pro, and it's like I had 2 reasons. And I said, number one, I knew I had a ceiling. I knew how good I could be, and it wasn't good enough to make it worth my while, and I would get beat up or hurt too much. Do I think one day I could have been ranked in the top 10 or 15 with the right moving along? Perhaps. But Jack, when you're in the ring and you're training with guys that their life depends on that, and it's their livelihood, I'm sorry, a kid from Cherry Hill who is licensed as a stockbroker and is going to do that part-time until he's done boxing, I'm sorry, it's just not the same. So I think that has a lot to do with it. And then remember, Jack, fighting, I still say they can talk about hitting a baseball or stopping a hockey puck. I still say fighting. I'm not going to say boxing in particular, but fighting, overall fighting, combat is still the hardest sport there is because no two guys are built the same. Everybody has different assets. You don't know what's coming at you. I think it's the toughest sport.
Okay, this is what drives me crazy. People come up with a cliche. It starts somewhere, could be anything, and everyone starts picking up on the cliche. And all of a sudden, a tiny thing explodes and it becomes big. One of them would be like someone started, the hardest thing to do in sports is hitting a baseball. And I try to explain to someone that if you put a tennis racket in my hand from the age of, let's say, 7, and I played baseball, Little League, if I continued playing through adulthood into my 20s and so on, if I face Roger Clemens 200 times, I'm going to get a hit at one point. I will. Well, one hit out of 200 at bats or whatever. But you put me against Federer, Nadal, Jokic, and they're hitting a ball 115 miles on the line. I'm not returning that ball at any point. So I don't go for the cliche, the hardest thing is hitting a baseball. You can't compare certain things. Some of these sideline catches these NFL players are making are insane. I couldn't make them and keep my feet in bounds like that, some of the things that they're doing. But a baseball, I'll be able to foul it off now and then. Just get the bat on it. If I were younger, of course, not now.
So
like 20.
You have a problem with that cliche, and the one I have a problem with is when guys try to pick certain arts as far as fighting arts, like what's better? Boxing, wrestling, karate, judo, BJJ, whatever. And I try to tell guys, because I have experience in that, there's no one art out there that is the best. Every martial art, I don't care what it is, has a vulnerability. BJJ, if you're on the ground, you're vulnerable because if the guy's got a friend, he's going to kick you in the head. Boxing, if you're upright, that's pretty good. But if you get taken down, then you have a problem. And if you're a grappler and you have no strike game, it's the same thing. I know guys, Jack. I do some BJJ and I do judo. I boxed and I've done Wing Chun and still do Wing Chun. I know some guys that if they get a hold of you, I don't care if you're a boxer, a kickboxer, whatever. If they get a hold of you and get you down, you're in trouble. But I also know some guys that have a hand game, that have a pair of hands, that if any of those guys, the judo guy, the BJJ gets near them, they're getting their ribs broke and they're getting knocked out before they get a chance to take them down. So it all depends on who's doing the art. There is no one thing. And if MMA proved anything, it showed no one disciple dominates and is a given. You need to be a well-rounded fighter. That's why it's popular. But Jack, I've also noticed, I think that's losing some of its steam too.
Well, when I was young, the big talk would be who would win a fight between the boxer and the wrestler. And boxing was so big, Muhammad Ali didn't have to challenge any wrestlers, like Bruno Sammartino. Bruno Sammartino was willing to have the fight, so on. And but who wants to compare the disciplines? One of the funniest things I ever saw, and there were so many funny Ali antics, The one with Antonio Inoki wasn't funny because Ali, blood clots in his leg, and Inoki was deathly afraid of Ali because he just fight the whole fight on his darn back. He obviously was psyched out, not wanting to get punched by Ali. But with Gorilla Monsoon, that was the funniest thing where Ali, is in the ring, outside the ring, pointing to Monsoon. And yeah, obviously it was all staged. The way Ali was flicking out the jabs and the Monsoon
Jack,
picked him up. Yeah.
I was friends, and a friend of mine, I knew Gorilla Monsoon's daughter, Sharon.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
we
Gino Morelli, right?
right. She married a guy named Mike Byrne. I think they're still married because Mike Byrne played rugby with a good friend of mine, and I played rugby with them from time to time. And we met Gorilla, and I teased Gorilla about that. And he said, yeah, he goes, it was work. He goes, if you notice, he holds his hand up so I can grab it and do it. He goes, it was all part of the thing to build up the Inoki fight. And that was a fact. Gorilla knew that.
No. But what was interesting too, Gorilla, if he, I know he had his other name, Gino, but we'll call him Gorilla. The way he spun Ali around in an airplane spin, I think it was a little longer than Ali wanted because Ali's eyes were closed. Like, wow, when am I going to come down? And then Gorilla put him down, not too hard. And that was funny, the way Ali, when he left the ring, is pointing to Gorilla like he's going to get him. It was hilarious. We
two things, Jack. The light thing first, it's not a big deal. But did you ever see the match when they had Gorilla Monsoon box Andre the Giant with the 20-ounce gloves?
No.
YouTube it sometimes. You want to talk about comedy? It's crazy. Here's a serious thing. And I don't know if you can appreciate this, and I don't know how many people can unless you did this. But this is a testament to what a tough man Muhammad Ali was, mentally and physically. Now, the leg kicks he was taking from Inoki. He ended up having blood clots in his leg, and we know that hindered him. He had to go to the hospital, get his legs pumped. He had to, it messed him up for his running when he was trained to fight Norton. But I'm telling you, those kicks, when you have a guy that works on making his shins hard, and those shin kicks and those kicks to the thighs, Jack, you have no idea how much they hurt. Okay. Now, the Muay Thai guys train for that. And I've actually done that where I can take a pretty good kick to the leg. But let me tell you something. I have no doubt in my mind, Muhammad Ali did not prepare for that, had no idea it was coming. And the fact that he took so many of those kicks and could still move around and jump up on the ropes and play the game like he did, I think it just says how tough that man was, because those kicks don't look like much, Jack. But let me tell you something. If I kicked you in the leg with a round kick on the side like that, not just you, anybody would be in serious trouble. And you can see that on the internet when you see guys take kicks like that, what it does. And Ali was not trained for that. And he took it and laughed at it. Like, I can't imagine how tough it was.
When you talk about the toughness of Ali with the broken jaw against Ken Norton,
that too.
There was a dispute when he got the broken jaw. Of course, Norton would like to say in round 12, and Norton really hit him hard on the jaw in round 12. My feeling is it happened very early in the fight because Howard Cosell was mentioning it very early in the fight.
The blood inside of Ali's mouth, yes.
Right. But I think in the 12th round, a fractured jaw became worse. That's what I think. So I think it's kind of twofold. I think by round 12, the pain started to become absolutely unbearable. Not that it wasn't bad early.
Well, here's another testament to Ali's toughness, Jack. I had my jaw broken once, okay? I was sparring Alex Ramos, and he caught me with a right hand, and my mouth was open, okay? And my jaw went off. And I finished that round, and I did one more round, and then they noticed that my mouth was bleeding inside. They said, you know what? You might have a fractured jaw or whatever. And all I can say is this. I could not imagine Ken Norton punching on me for one round with a broken jaw, let alone 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 10, like that fight was. And remember, Pacheco was talking about stopping that fight. And Ali said, if you stop the fight, you'll never work for me again. I can deal with the pain and make it through. Don't worry about me. So the toughness of the man was incredible.
Yeah,
and I think that sometimes that's overlooked.
We're talking about these mixed matches. When Chuck Wepner fought Andre the Giant, I still don't know is it real. I sat next to Wepner at a banquet years ago. I had him all to myself. And I asked him, is that really for real and not real? And something about Chuck, he's more elusive outside the ring than he was in it. He talked to me at length, and I still didn't have my answer. I still had no idea, real, not
That's
real.
pretty good.
I mean, Chuck was tap dancing, no clue. And I'm curious. I can't imagine it being real, and I'm going to tell you why I can't imagine it being real. Because the WWE had too much invested in Andre the Giant to risk him getting knocked out. It would have been a colossal disaster for them. Boxing wasn't hurt by Chuck Wepner getting pinned, thrown out of the ring, as it turned out. But then again, there could have been a certain arrogance, and maybe justifiably so, on the part of the WWE and everyone else. They might have figured Andre's a lock to be Wepner. I mean,
Andre was a monster, Jack. I mean, he was a monster and a legitimate giant, and like the stories about how strong he was.
Yeah, but who never truly got hit by a heavyweight boxer. There's where the danger lies. I mean, I don't care how big a guy is. Listen, let's take a big-sized NBA player. Okay, there are a number of them. I mean, who's a real big guy who's tough, a big body? Mitch Robinson on the Knicks. Okay, we don't know what type of punch Mitch Robinson would take from an average heavyweight. You put him in with
Jack. We saw that with Too Tall Jones. We saw that with Too Tall Jones. He was one of the best ends in the NFL. And people don't realize that when he came back after he boxed and went into football again, back into the Cowboys, he was actually a better player. But Too Tall Jones, Jack, we could tell he couldn't punch worth a lick, even though he tried. And we know that he didn't fight anybody that was real that could hurt him. And a couple times he was caught by cuff punches. He was in trouble.
Too Tall, when I interviewed him, it was really revealing. He told me boxing is the greatest sport in the world. He would have much rather had his career as a boxer than a football player, but he was a football player because of the economics, because that was the situation. But his heart was with boxing. That's the crazy thing. If you would have told Too Tall you're getting the same money to box that you're getting to play football, he would have been a boxer on the spur of the moment. And also, who was his teammate for a while, who used to do our podcast, Jim Jeffcoat, he once went with another Cowboy player, I forgot the name, to one of these conditioning coaches. They put him through one round of boxing. He says, I couldn't believe it. I was exhausted. I had nothing.
Who said this,
left.
Jim?
In the gym. He went to the gym. And he actually was like, push the box, move here, there. He was like gassed out. And Jim was saying he was in shape normally. He thought he was in shape. But
there's all kind of shape, Jack. There's all kind of shape.
I think you have to be used to what you're doing. I think there's more to it than that. Because when I was younger, I'd run marathons. I didn't play basketball. One time when I was in really top shape, doing a lot of running, I played basketball. The stop, the go, the stop, the go. I wasn't used to it. I was getting tired. I just wasn't used to that type of running. I'd be used to continuous running, or I could sprint, slow down, but the short intervals, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go. I mean, it was like, I was like shocked. I said, I'm actually tired. I don't believe it.
Yeah. It all depends on the type of training you do. It's the same thing. Like, I'm sure a boxer wouldn't have a lot of condition if he wrestled, and vice versa. If the wrestler tried to box, it's like he'd be dead in a couple rounds, if that.
What do you think of this modern technology with training methods? I'm going to get on our show a buddy of mine who's conditions fighter, Scooter Honig. He's worked with a number of world champions. I'm going to get him to come on one time to compare notes with him. What's your feeling on the old time method? You mentioned Rocky Marciano before. The old time method was run for distance, okay? Just put your miles in. You could, some fighters wore heavy boots, and to me, that was always a farce because it makes you run slow, and there's a myth that builds up your ankles, your legs. I don't go for that. Or the modern methods where they're like intervals a lot of the time. You know, they try to mimic what goes on in the ring. They got these,
which I think would be the way to do it. But I used to run with Dwight Qualley, and let me tell you something, Jack. He was probably the slowest runner I ever ran with in my life. But his mindset was, if I'm running and I'm on the road for 45 minutes, just the fact that I'm working for 45 minutes is what I need. I need my heart pumping for 45 minutes. Where I used to run with Rocky Lockridge, and at one time I was actually a pretty good long distance runner. I used to run with Lockridge, Jack, and I'm telling you, he had the pace of an antelope, never got tired, and he passed everybody. I ran with a lot of different people, guys that wrestled, played football, other boxers. No one ran like Rocky Lockridge. He could go 15 rounds, but yet a guy like Dwight went 15 rounds at Holyfield and Spinks, running like a turtle.
You know, you mentioned Rocky Lockridge. I didn't know that about him. But now let's question something. He lost his title to Wilfredo Gomez, okay? Now, I know you're going to say, and I agree, I thought Lockridge should have gotten the decision, but Gomez owned the late rounds of the contest. Lockridge kind of, I don't want to use the word faded. Maybe he just got complacent, whatever reason, okay? So if you have this endless stamina, you should be fighting hard in the late rounds of the contest. Now, I don't want to hear that he may have thought he was so far in front.
I was not going to go there.
Right, because it was in Puerto Rico against the Puerto Rican. So come on, no decision is going to be.
But Jack, Rocky had substance abuse problems at that point of his career. After like 82 or 83, he had a lot of issues with substance abuse. So I don't know what was going on then. But I remember watching the fight, and I can be objective, and I thought Lockridge clearly won that fight. I thought that was a horrible decision.
I had him up 8-7. That was my score. That yeah, because I thought he really blew a number of the later rounds. But, you know, that's here and there. You were at talking about bad decisions, you were at I believe you were at it was in Philadelphia, Tyrone
Escalera.
Do you remember how you scored that?
I didn't keep a tab on it, Jack, but I remember thinking that Everett won at least 11 or 12 rounds. That there was just no contest. I don't know anybody who saw that fight that didn't think Everett won at least 10 rounds.
I didn't see it live, and it's not the best way to score. I saw it tape years later, and I thought Everett won 11 rounds.
That's fair.
Best case scenario you could do for Escalera. This is best case, saying, yeah, maybe he lost 9 rounds to 6. That's best case scenario.
Which is a pretty big margin.
But then again, I could say I think Everett won 12, 13 rounds as well, you know, on that. But getting back with Chamberlain. Now, Chamberlain would have been trained by Customato. That's the interesting part about it. He met with Customato, and this is before Mike Tyson came into existence. This is between Floyd Patterson and Mike Tyson. And D'Amato wasn't relevant in the boxing community anymore. And this was his way of getting back in. And he told Chamberlain, you could beat Ali. With your strength and power, you could knock him out. And this shows you the brilliance of D'Amato, even though I can't imagine this happening, Chamberlain winning. He told Chamberlain, we're not going to teach you how to box. We're going to teach you how to fight one man. That's what made D'Amato brilliant. And that was the strategy. Later it would come out very discreetly. The strategy was this. Chamberlain was going to just circle the ring, move, jab with his long arms. And eventually Ali would come in and Chamberlain could come over the top with a big punch and catch Ali. And that's what D'Amato was banking on, saying that you're so strong and powerful with your power. When you hit him, he's going to go out. Now, obviously, what are the chances of that happening?
We don't know what kind of a punch Will Chamberlain could deliver. We don't know what kind of a punch he took. It's just kind of funny for D'Amato, though, because all the three guys he's known for training, Torres, Patterson, and Tyson, were all shorter guys with shorter arms that used to come in and do the peekaboo and try to push the fight, get you to punch, and then they would punch in between the spaces there, like he taught Tyson and like he taught Patterson, and Torres had a lot of that. So it's like Chamberlain had none of the assets that D'Amato groomed his fighters on. So that would have been interesting.
And he was very weak mentally, Will Chamberlain, just weak mentally. And the reason the fight didn't take place, reportedly, they were about to sign the contracts and Ali messed it up. He went into the room, he saw Chamberlain and started going timber. And I mean, Ali would have played such a mind game on Wilt. You kind of wonder whether Wilt would have made an excuse to pull out a day.
All right, let me ask you this, though. You said Wilt is weak mentally.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to challenge you on that. But why would you say that? The reason why I won't challenge you on that is because how many championship games did he lose to the Celtics? 4 or 5?
No, I'm going to give you an example. When I say weak,
no, but I'm asking you because I want to make my point. How many? He lost what? 5 times?
I don't know the exact number. He beat the Celtics one year when he was with the Sixers.
Right. Okay.
And he lost to them, with the Lakers, the series they absolutely should have won. But
Jack, how about the 7th game against the Knicks, where Willis Reed only took 2 shots? He made them both and then was not a non-factor. But my point is, a guy who was supposed to be as physically strong and dominant and mean as Wilt Chamberlain, in a lot of big spots, in big game 7s, he came up small. And I do think that's a part of it. That's a mental issue.
Weak mentally. Even that series with the Knicks, where they lost in 7 games, 2 things stand out. It was 2 games apiece. Willis Reed got hurt in game 5, and the Lakers had a 16-point lead with Willis Reed out and not coming back. And they blew it. And then for game 7, Wilt writes in his book, he says, I don't know what my teammates thought, but whether they were thinking the way I did, but I was getting the feeling the Knicks were a team of destiny. You know what Bill Russell said? If he would have
I didn't know that.
Right. If he would have seen Willis Reed on one bad leg, Bill Russell would have said, I'm going to take his other leg out from under him. Bill Russell would have smelled blood, and Bill Russell would have capitalized on it. No ifs or buts. We're burying you. You're going to come out here in the court. You're going to wish you didn't limp on here in the court. But the Lakers were doing, before game 7, before Willis limped out, remember all the Lakers kept looking. They wondered whether he was coming out. Bill Russell he wouldn't have been looking. If Bill Russell said, who gives a damn? Come out. I hope you come out because I can't wait to kick you behind.
Didn't Chamberlain take himself out of a 7th game too in one of them series against the Celtics?
Yeah, you're right. That was the 7th game, Lakers too. I believe, I can't say I'm certain, it's possible he got a bad cramp, a semi-injury. Number one, if you have an injury, you're not going to be better a half hour later. But what had happened, he got his 5th foul. Chamberlain was very stat-oriented. He never He never fouled out of his game in his whole career.
Which tells you something else.
Right. Well, no, not necessarily, but in that game, he was in danger of fouling out, and he wanted to kind of preserve the record. But you know what the problem was? The Lakers waged a furious comeback. Then he sees the coach, Butch Van Bredekop, and says, put me back in the game, because he sees the Lakers could actually win, and the championship is on the line. And Van Bredekop says, shut up. I don't know whether he said it exactly, but paraphrasing, shut up and sit down. And he never put Wilt back in. Never put him back in.
Okay. So think about that mindset that you just said
And
about
Russell
Russell.
had 5 fouls in that game, got up to 5 fouls and stayed in.
Okay. So, Jack, that is, to me, that mindset separates the greats and the near greats. We know Michael Jordan was a killer. Okay. I don't know. LeBron James is not a killer. Okay.
No, I don't go with that. You're thinking early in LeBron's
He's not,
career.
Jack, he's not feared. He does not have Jordan's mentality. He's not. And I was going to correlate it to fighters like you do. Okay. And here's the difference in some fighters. Everybody they like to make the matchup between Mike Tyson and Joe Frazier. And they'll go, well, Tyson's a fast starter. Frazier's a slow starter. Both are right. But if you're a hard hitter, you can beat Frazier because you can get him early. Well, George Foreman did. Nobody else did that. But the thing that makes it hard for me to ever pick Tyson over Ali or Frazier or Foreman or Holmes or Joe Louis or any of those guys is I know and I've seen Mike Tyson. You can get to him. And if you can convince him, he's not going to win. Evander Holyfield did that 2 times, and we know what the result was. And to me, that separates the greats from the mere greats. Is Mike Tyson more gifted than Joe Frazier? Yes. If you had a football check mark and you did like a combine, Tyson would get more checks than Frazier. But would that make a difference if they fought? I just can't see Tyson ever convincing Frazier he was not going to win until he was literally counted out. Or I could see Tyson having a couple good moments and then Joe rocking him and then Tyson losing his nerve.
Oh, right. I agree with. At certain points in the fight, fighters' mindset changes for the negative. They'll hang in there. Customato, you know what he used to label? He'd say they're fighters who are determined quitters. They don't actually quit the fight itself. They hang in there. They take a beating, but they've stopped trying to win. And he said Jerry Quarry was one of them.
I know.
He's right.
I don't buy that, but I know he said it.
No, I buy it. The first Quarry-Frazier fight, there came a point in the fight where Quarry just was hanging in there. He saw, stop trying to win the fight. Look, even Cooney said it against Holmes in that HBO documentary. There came a point in the fight where he felt, I'm not going to win anymore. I just want to show I could take everything he dishes out. That's a form of quitting. The word quitting sounds bad. That's why people don't like to, just the term itself. No one likes to be called a quitter.
But Jack, your example of Quarry, I mean, Frazier was killing him, and Quarry couldn't hurt him. What could he do but hang in there? What could he do?
Let me put it another way. No matter how much Frazier would be beaten up in any fight, no matter how tired he was, he's going to keep trying to win the fight no matter what. He's not going to shut off just to survive. 14th round in Manila. He wanted to continue. He would have come out for the 15th round.
Absolutely.
And he would have tried to land the left hook to win the fight. He wouldn't have just been saying, okay, I just want to get through the round.
But Jack, when you're in the situation that Quarry was against Frazier in the 69 fight, okay, was a good fight for 3 rounds, okay? But after that, it's like Frazier got the better of him by a little bit more each round. But it's like Quarry was trying to set him up and catch him coming in, but when he did catch him, he couldn't hurt him.
Not in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, as I recall.
He was trying to sucker him, Jack. He was waiting for Frazier to load, and then whenever, even Frazier said that after the fight, he thought he would get me on, he'd make a run at me. But that's all he could do because he didn't have a big gas tank, and he was getting beat to the punch. I don't think that's a form of quitting. I think he just got out all he had. He wasn't. The other guy was better.
Yeah, no, a fight like Frazier and Jimmy Ellis, their first fight, Ellis kept trying every moment to win the fight, actually. Even when he got knocked down, and then the last knockdown, he was trying to nail Frazier with a big right hand, even though he was getting beaten up and Frazier was in full gear. That's what I mean. But certain fighters they shut off at a certain point. They just shut off. I mean, maybe physically they had nothing left. Like Ernie, Terrell, and Ali. Did Terrell shut off in the late rounds, or was it a question of he had nothing left at all, to throw? Sometimes it's just not clear in a fight like
But I mean,
that.
I think Corey, and I think the same thing with Ellis. I think they both tried. It's just they were outmanned, and that happens.
But keep this in mind. D'Amato's basic strength was working on fighters mentally.
Yes.
And Chamberlain would have been a guy, man, oh man, that would have been the ultimate case for him to solve.
Could you imagine if Chamberlain got beat up in sparring? What that would have done with him?
D'Amato wouldn't allow that to happen. Because D'Amato would have known his psyche was such. For all I know, Chamberlain might not have even sparred. He might have the unknown, just move around the ring, just practice this one move over and over. I mean, we don't know. But
well, that would have been crazy.
Point. How would Chamberlain have gotten trained? Because D'Amato's guys, you make a great point. Patterson, Torres, and Tyson all have the same basic peekaboo style. They come forward and,
He taught everybody the same style. He taught everybody the same style. I've always joked about that about Joe Frazier. I always said if Joe Frazier would train Muhammad Ali, he would have taught Muhammad Ali how to fight like him. Come in, bobbing and weaving and trying to go to the body and into the head. And Ali's the opposite. He would have trained everybody to move around the ring and jab.
Do you feel Joe ruined his son Marvis as a fighter?
I hate to say it, Jack. I really do hate to say this, but I don't think Joe was the best thing for Marvis. Marvis was really a good boxer with quick hands. He was not a traitor and a slugger like Joe. He just wasn't. That wasn't who he was. And he was with Val Colbert and George Benton. Right. They had a movement and boxing.
And then when Joe got involved and changed the style,
Marvis became a headhunter and an attacker.
And Marvis didn't have a big punch. That's the problem. He didn't have a big punch. Even Eddie.
Marvis had, he had decent power, but he was not a killer at that. He just wasn't a life taker. He was more of a boxer, more of a counterpuncher boxer.
Eddie Futch criticized Frazier, Joe for trying to change Marvis's style and all, giving him the hook. Marvis, it just didn't pan out. You could say, in a sense, maybe Joe didn't. Getting the Holmes fight, Dave Wolf actually defended Joe to get the Holmes fight, saying some people are going to say it's too soon, but it's hard to get certain title fights.
That was it. You can't turn a title fight down when it's offered to you. That was the rationale.
Yeah.
But Jack, Joe would have trained Michael Spinks to fight like Braxton. That's the style that Joe knew. Joe thought he never said it, but you just knew he felt if you're backing up, you're losing. And that's kind of the mindset that Marvis had.
Do you think it had the Ali effect on Joe because he hated Ali so much, and Ali's method of operation in the ring was to move around, move, and Joe had such contempt for Ali that he would never train a fighter to fight like Ali.
Jack, I don't know, but I could see that being part of his makeup. We know that Henry Armstrong was his idol. So, and we know how he fought.
No, I don't think it was Joe's idol. I think if anyone,
Joe Frazier's idol. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Henry Armstrong.
Joe Louis. Yeah. Joe Louis he looked up to, but Henry Armstrong was a style that he emulated.
Oh, that was the style. Yeah. That was.
That's the style that he emulated. But then again, Jack, you could say he emulated that style, but what other style could he have had? If you remember,
Frank, we only have a minute to go, so just 2-0 Knicks are up. To wrap it up, how's the rest of the series going to go? You're still on the fence. So what?
I have no idea. I just know the Knicks are going to win. I don't know if it's going 7 or 4, but the Knicks are going to win. They're the better team.
I think it's going to go 6 games. The people in New York are getting too arrogant, my fellow New Yorkers, by having the brooms out. Knicks in 4. Knicks are playing a good team.
So the Spurs are going to win one of the games in New York.
Yeah, Spurs will win. For all I know, the Spurs will win both games in New York, and the Knicks will win Game 5, a close one in San Antonio, and then win Game 6 back.
I would actually like to see the series get tied 2-2 just for the fun of it.
Oh, that'll be
I don't see it though.
If it goes 2-2. Oh man, oh man, oh man, what a story is going to be unfolding.
And Jack, speaking of guys with a killer instinct, Jalen Brunson is a guy with a killer instinct, and he is clutch.
Hopefully it turns out that way tonight, coming from a guy who wants the Knicks to win. Okay, see you next week, Frank.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for watching.